All right, boys and girls, so today we're going to read some more pages of All the Grays on Green Street. And if you tuned in to the pages 1 through 9, we found that Olympia, we found that she is a girl. Lucy and I read the Dust Jacket, and she's a girl. Our story takes place in 1981, and which, by the way, was the year I was born. Holy cow, 38 years ago. And so our story, in our story, Olympia, whose nickname is also Ollie, her mom is in bed and she's really sad because her dad, Olympia's dad, left without saying goodbye to her family, so everyone thinks, but really he left a special note for Ollie telling her not to tell anybody else about the message, so she destroyed it. So let's go ahead and continue today. This chapter is called Few, Several, Many. Bobby Sands is going to die, Alex told me. The garbage on my block is usually pretty interesting. For example, there are always these long cardboard tubes outside the United Thread factory that make good lightsabers. Alex and Richard were dueling with 2 of them on Monday morning outside my building when I came out to walk to school. They stopped when they saw me out because they think playing Star Wars is babyish now. I was impressed. Usually they forget that I'm someone to be embarrassed in front of. I've known Alex forever. He lives a block away, and we walk to school together most days. There aren't that many kids in Soho, so the public school closest to us is in the West Village. Richard lives closer to school, but he'd spent the night at Alex's house. It had looked warmer out the window than it actually was, and I shivered. Alex pulled off the blue sweatshirt I knew his mom, Linda, had made him tie around his waist before he left. When I put it on, the sleeves come down over my hands. Sweater weather, Richard said happily. Spring comes all at once in New York. One day, the sun comes out and the birds start chirping and the trees in Washington Square Park get flowers. A month later, the pavement melts and everything starts smelling like the greasy stain below the dumpster outside Seatown. But there are 2 days every fall and every spring when it's warm but still cool and breezy and clean smelling, and this was one of them, sweater weather. 65 days without food, Ollie, Alex said. 65 days. He was talking about the Irish hunger strike, Bobby Sands. Sorry, the Irish hunger striker, Bobby Sands. But I had woken up thinking about my mom and everything that had happened the last time she went to bed, and I didn't want to talk about Bobby Sands. I kept walking. Alex was doing what Alex does when he has to get someplace, which is a combination of vaulting over trash cans, balancing on ledges, and walking on his hands. It's difficult to have a conversation with a person doing that. He tried again. He has to be on a waterbed now. His bones are so fragile. Let's not be macabre, I said, in my trademark perfect intimidation of his mom. In fact, it was exactly what Linda had said when she'd first found out that Alex and I were interested in the hunger striker. The secret to sounding exactly like Linda is to keep your teeth shut even when you are talking. Open your mouth, but not your teeth, and you'll sound exactly like her too. Ooh, that's strange. So it's to talk without opening your mouth? Open your mouth, but not your teeth. So I guess talking like this.
Hi, Mom. How are you doing?
I think she talks like this. So, which is very difficult. Try it. See how you think. The trademark imitation worked. First, Alex looked surprised. Then he shot me a furious look and sped up so he was walking away in front of me. I watched him disappear around the corner onto West Broadway, his lightsaber in front of him, and I fell back to walk with Richard. Richard was using his lightsaber as a staff. He is the slowest walker of anyone I've ever met. Richard does everything slow. His mother said that's because he is deeply thoughtful, but even she gets annoyed if she's in a hurry. Who was that big guy on your block? He asked me. I shook my head. I had no idea what he was talking about. He was stopping people to ask questions. He tried to show us something, but we ran. That was weird. Creeper? Probably not. We just didn't feel like getting into it. That meant Alex hadn't felt like getting into it. He doesn't like to stop. How come you slept in Alex's house? Linda wasn't usually a fan of the school night sleepover. My mom had to go to a meeting. Richard's mom is a professor. She is very politically active. Was his dad there? Richard shook his head no. Alex's dad travels for business all the time. What'd you have for dinner? This was an important question because Linda is always on a diet. I don't know why she bothers because she always looks the same, but that is the number one reason why it's terrible to sleep at Alex's house. At least when Linda was doing Atkins, they had steak and hamburgers all the time, even if you didn't get a bun. It had been pretty hard on Alex since she started Pritikin, though. I don't know what that is. Pritikin?
Pritikin.
Pritikin? I don't know if it's a diet or maybe if it's medicine. I don't know. I'll have to look that up and get back to you. I privately thought Alex was interested in Bobby Sands because he was also hungry. I wasn't sure why I was interested in Bobby Sands. We had vegetable soup and Linda counted out 8 crackers. Richard talked slowly too. Afterwards, he grimaced, there was cottage cheese with sugar-free jam. Cottage cheese is punishment, not food. It is certainly not dessert. Oh, I have to disagree. I love cottage cheese. You like cottage cheese? No, I know she doesn't like cottage cheese.
Yeah.
Do you guys like cottage cheese?
Do you want me to look up that word real quick?
No, it's okay. Let's see. So, do any of you have experiences like they are whenever they are talking about the food and the diets and things like that and eating healthy? Because sometimes us moms get on like eating healthy kicks. And so, yeah, sometimes that happens. Richard and I cross onto Bedford. It's so narrow you have to go single file, which makes it hard to talk, but Richard never minds a long silence. I have to say, he is a very comfortable person. I was distracted, too wound up in my own thoughts, even to ask to pet people's dogs. That morning, I'd gone into my mom's room to say goodbye. I'd hoped that she'd tell me her plans for the day or some news about my dad, but she barely opened her eyes. Even her hair looked tired. Every night, the reading lamp had made all the clutter in her room look cozy and nest-like. In the morning, though, the sunlight leaking in through the sheets over the windows washed everything out, making the room look gray and dirty. On my way home from the park on Saturday, I'd stopped to get her favorite pasta from Louisie's, but she hadn't eaten more than a bite, and the sight of the cold, hard spaghetti sitting in a puddle of congelated clam sauce had made my stomach flip. Afterward, I went back into my own room and made my bed. So congelated means like, I believe it means like hardened and like all put together. It's just kind of like, you know, if you were to leave spaghetti on the table or on the counter overnight, which is really yucky. And so why do you think she went back and made her bed?
Because she had nothing to do. She was doing everything else.
You think so?
She was bored.
I think it's maybe because she was seeing her mom's room all messy.
So she wanted to clean it.
And she wanted her room to feel clean. Alex was ahead of us, dragging his lightsaber across a brownstone's wrought iron front gate. Do you guys know what a brownstone is?
No.
Brownstone is like, if I believe correctly, if I'm correct, a brownstone is actually like a house, or they're houses that are connected together. So, if you see in movies where people live in New York City, all the houses are own individual houses, but they're all connected.
Oh, it's like a long line of houses. But
yes, they're connected together,
okay.
But they have their own house area.
Okay,
that's a brownstone, I believe. Okay, let's see. So, winter pale and extra skinny, he was wearing the red Kool-Aid t-shirt he usually lent me when I slept over at his house. It was getting to be a little too small for him, even though it was a little too big for me still. The guy from the deli on Houston and 6th was whistling as he hosed off the sidewalk outside, and the smell of the cool spray hitting the pavement made it feel like it was already summer, except that I didn't want to think about summer just yet. Alex would spend the summer at the beach with his Auntie Em on a little island with no cars on it. Richard would go to his grandparents on his mom's side on another little island off North Carolina. My parents are both orphans, and my mom doesn't really like to go away, so I planned on hanging out with my dad and Apollo in the studio like I did last summer, drawing and mixing paints and doing odd jobs for them. But it was going to happen now. But what was going to happen now was not what another thing wow, that's really hard to say. But what was going to happen now was another thing I didn't know. Do you know what an orphan is?
Like you were adopted?
Yeah, an orphan means that you don't have parents. I stepped carefully over the trash bags, crowding the narrow sidewalk. Before she went to bed, my mom was always moving, stocking, sorting, foraging for her sculptures. She'd give me a boost into a dumpster. Poke around to see if there's anything interesting in there. If I found something I thought she'd like, I'd pass it out so she could take a look, turning it slowly in her strong hands. I loved that. Richard didn't say anything more until we were a block away from school. Then, also, I got up in the middle of the night and ate some ham. As if we'd been talking about dinner at Alex's house the whole time. That's just what he's like. Maybe that's why I told him, or maybe it was the restless feeling of spring in the air and the noisy clutter of kids on the corner enjoying their last minutes of freedom before the first bell. All I know is that the words had slipped out of my mouth before I decided I wanted to say them. My mom, I said, and stopped to wait for my voice to get less shaky. A turning cab driver honked, and I grabbed at Richard's elbow to hurry him along, glad Alex had gone ahead. Even though Richard doesn't like to keep things from his parents, he can if you need him to. Alex likes to think of himself as a tough guy, but he'd crumple like a Coke can if Linda so much as looked at him twice, and I needed this to say his secret. I cleared my throat and started again. She's not getting up right now. And as soon as the words were out, I wished I could call them all back. Alex would have made a joke. Richard didn't. How long? A few days, I said. Not strictly true. According to our third grade teacher, Mrs. Pruitt, a few meant 3, so I changed my answer. Several. Several means 4 or more, although I couldn't be sure Richard would remember that. The last time my mom had gone to bed, of course, the answer had been many. Many, Mrs. Pruitt said, was an uncountable noun. Richard's eyes widened, patient for once. I waited as he marched in his mind through everything that meant, hoping he'd see an angle I'd missed, but he'd only scratched his forearm, fingernails carving silvery trails into the dark brown of his skin. You'll bleed, I warned him from experience. We're all allergic to herbal stress reduction potion that Linda sprays on her sheets, even Alex, not to mention that it smells like a tissue you'd find at the bottom of somebody's grandma's purse. Blech, that's gross. Richard frowned, but switched to rubbing his arm with the flats of his fingers. What if it's like it was last time? I looked at the lines on his forehead. He didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say that wasn't too terrible to say out loud. Ollie, if she doesn't get up, your dad isn't around, then what's going to happen? I cut him off with a fast shake of my head, and he closed his mouth, which was good, because I really didn't want him to finish that sentence. We'd caught up with the kids at the corner, their backpacks in a messy pile at the center of the circle. As the first bell rang, I peeled off the blue sweatshirt and tossed it back to Alex, then sped up to walk into the building with my art friend, Lady Day. It's going to be fine, I called back to Richard over my shoulder, but I didn't turn all the way around so I wouldn't have to see the look on his face. Well, that's really sad. So do you think this is the first time her mom's been in bed sad?
No.
No, she's done it before.
Because you can tell how they react.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right, so that was page 10 through 16. And I'll read one more section today.
Because they were like, oh, how many times this time?
Yes, how many days this time? Very good. Smudge. Lady Day Rodriguez is the other really good artist in my class. We always sit together in art. Mrs. Ejiofor, oh my gosh, Ejiofor.
I would call her something else. I can't say that.
Oh my gosh, that's like...
Miss Egypt.
That's a very interesting name. I don't think I've ever seen a name like this in a book before. Let's see here. How about we call her Ejiofor? Mrs. Ejiofor. That sounds pretty good. Mrs. Ejiofor usually lets us start working while she gets the boys settled down. That day, we were finishing our self-portraits in charcoal. I hate charcoal. You'd think I'd like it because there's no color involved, but I hate the horrible scratching sound it makes against the paper and the smudgy mess of it. Every time Mrs. Ejiofor Every time Mrs. Ejiofor gives us an assignment to use it, I tell myself that I'm going to keep my filthy fingers away from the white spaces on my paper, that I'm going to use one hand for blending while keeping the other one clean, that I will neatly shade and hatch and highlight instead of making a furious little pigpen cloud. Every time, though, I end up with a blob of gray on a dirty paper, and I walk out of the classroom looking like one of the kids in the book of a Dust Bowl photograph my dad used to suggest My dad used to suggest I look through when I was complaining about something. Give me a properly sharpened black wing any day. I have a good fact for you, Lady Day said. Her grandma sent her a book of cat facts for her birthday. Okay, what's the biggest difference between dogs and cats? I knew that answer to that one. If you die in your apartment, your dog won't eat you. Your cat will. Apollo told me that. He also told me that the difference between a cat person and a dog person is that a cat person generally doesn't mind the idea of being eaten.
I mind the idea of being eaten, actually.
Oh, that reminds me, boys and girls, today our kitten, so we got a kitten for Christmas, Lucy did. And Lucy, what did she do today?
She caught her first mouse. She's still a little kitten, so I was
She
so
caught
happy.
her first mouse. It was outside. She's an outside kitty now, and so she caught her first mouse, so we were very proud of her.
My other cat caught one yesterday. I'm like, oh, that's so cute. Well, was it yesterday?
It doesn't
It
matter.
was Wednesday. But it was
This
at
week.
school.
But yeah, so it was interesting.
big.
It was big. It was funny seeing this little tiny kid with this mouse. So anyway, text to self. Lady Day looked a little deflated, but also impressed. She had a calico named Sammy who steals the celery out of the Kung Pao chicken when Lady Day's dad brings home Chinese. I wouldn't care because I never eat the celery anyway, but Lady Day's dad lets her do it because he thinks it's funny. Sammy is a girl. Calico cats almost always are, according to the book. Anyway, Sammy doesn't eat the celery either. She licks it. I was going to say that a cat will explore a new room or situation without looking back for her owner, Lady Day said, adding a few scattered freckles to the bridge of her self-portrait's nose. Dogs need more support. Cats are more independent.
Who is Lady Day?
Her friend from art class.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That seemed right. You didn't see cats looking tragic outside of the Eagle coffee shop on Broadway. Sure, that they'd been heartlessly abandoned even though they could see their owners through the window reading the Post and eating scrambled eggs on toast like they did every morning. Maybe cat people were like cats and dog people were like dogs. Lady Day was definitely a cat person, curious and independent. You think Sammy would eat you if you died? I asked Lady Day, accidentally making my self-portrait more accurate by smearing a black thumb across my cheek. I'm pretty sure she would. Lady Day whipped her long, graceful fingers methodically on a damp paper towel, then dabbed them on another. I'm sorry, I'm distracted because my son's making some crazy noises upstairs. Then dabbed them dry on another. Harsh, I said, experimentally blowing on a surface of my drawing like Miss Ejorf had showed us, to clear some of the dust and expose the white surface below. Nothing happened, except maybe the paper looked a little damp. Lady Day blew expertly at hers. An obedient puff of dust rose, exposing pristine white detailed beneath. What do I care if I'm dead? Why should she go hungry when I'm lying there like a big stupid roast beef? She picked up her charcoal again. Something's going to eat me eventually. It might as well be Sammy. Apollo had been right. I hoped Lady Day would tell me another cat fact, but her long, lean body was bent nearly doubled over her drawing, and the tip of her tongue stuck out the corner of her mouth, meaning she was done with talking. Charcoal, it turned out, was the perfect medium to capture the spun texture of her hair when it's brushed out, pulled up into two clouds on top of her head. I smudged half-heartedly at my own self-portrait a little while longer, but it was hopeless. I spent the rest of the period at the big sink, scrubbing at my hands and face with the waxy gray paper towels from the metal dispenser and thinking about what a mess everything was. I hadn't been keeping the thing with my mom a secret, or maybe I had been, a little. But having it out in the open had changed it, the way an apple turns brown after it's cut. I didn't like the way I felt now that Richard knew the truth. Anything could happen and I couldn't stop it. There was something else, too. I felt ashamed. All the stinky pink soap in the world couldn't get rid of the black half-moons the charcoal had left under my nails, but I clawed at my palms anyway. It was better than thinking. Even if I could find my dad, what if he didn't want to come back? What if he couldn't? I ran a paper towel around the edge of the wide trough-style sink to pick up the gray droplets I'd scattered, then dried the stainless taps to a shine. I was a cat person too. At least I thought I was. But I couldn't help wondering if it was possible for an independent, curious cat person to be having a please love me, don't leave me, desperate doggy kind of day. Oh, wow. Olympia Alley she's really kind of a sad little kiddo right now, isn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of makes me sad. I'm kind of curious to see what's going to happen with her.
Are those
So, oh yeah, those are brownstones. So here we go.
I think I saw
So
them.
on the back, there's some illustrations, and there's some, looks like some brownstones, some houses and
And
stuff.
some in the front.
It looks like maybe some of them might be businesses at the bottom, but here you can see.
Looks like some right
brownstones,
there
yeah,
and
they're
some
attached.
right there.
Yeah.
Wait, does it go on the end?
And you can see here, look, what's that? Can you see what that is?
The Twin Towers.
The Twin Towers.
Because
Because
one has
this
a spoke and one doesn't.
this is 1981, so were the towers there?
Yep.
They were.
And it was New York too.
All right.
And one has
So, tune in next time. Bye-bye.